There are loads of reboots and remasters in media. Mega conglomerates love them, and so do the fans. The fans get more of what they love, and companies get that sweet, sweet money. A win-win. Well, at least it kind of is. It's 2021, and reboots and remakes have been a staple in the entertainment industry for decades. But let me get something straight before I continue. Since this video will be focusing on cartoon reboots and video game remakes, I would like to clarify what these words mean before I continue. A reboot is when a cancelled/completed IP gets injected with life elixir and brought back from the dead to air once more on your favorite TV channel or streaming service. A remake is when an old video game gets completely new graphics, reworked controls, and is released on new modern hardware. Both of these reboots and remakes and reboot makes. No, remakes? Remakes. Both remakes typically follow this three-step formula. 1. Bring in a new audience. 2. Bring in the old audience. And 3. Bring in that sweet, sweet cash! Also, do not ever harass creators or crew members. Ever. No matter what. These people are working hard and deserve respect. If these people make things you don't like, don't harass them. Don't bully them online. Just leave them alone. Don't harass real life people, my goodness. Great, now that we got that out of the way, it is time for a little trip to the past as we look at an example of a cartoon reboot. Ducktales. There are two different Ducktales TV shows. The first Ducktales TV show aired from 1987 to 1990. After airing for 4 years, it ended with 100 episodes, spanning 4 TV seasons and a full-length feature film that played all over the theaters of USA. It's fair to say that this was not your average television cartoon. Not many cartoons get that sweet VIP movie treatment, much less a theatrical release. This spelled success for Disney and the DuckTales series. Multiple sequels were announced for the movies. There were other spin-off shows announced to be airing as well. The 4th season was to air that September. Things were looking...
Bless me bagpipes.
Yeah, okay, no, never mind. So, after spending $20 million on the film, DuckTales Treasure of the Lost Lamp was only able to rake in just a little over $18 million in the box office. This was not the success Disney had in mind for the series. The movie sequels were scrapped. The show ended that November with only 7 episodes in season 4. Compare this to the previous 3 seasons and not looking too hot. Thus ended DuckTales. 25 years later. It's 2015, and DuckTales is announced to come back to the world in 2017. That's right, your favorite cartoon ducks are back and better than ever in this new reboot. After almost 30 years of fan outcry, the Duck family would return. Not continuing where the previous show left off, no. This wasn't a sequel, this was a whole new thing. A brand new voice cast, a brand new style that represented the Carl Barks old Duck comics, and a brand new storyline. DuckTales returned and blessed our screens with the best reboot we'll probably ever get. This was indeed Ducktales, with the same characters and setting from its predecessor, but with a new coat of paint for modern audiences. This reboot ran from 2017 to 2021 and ended with 69 episodes over 3 seasons. There was no movie, however, it did end with a 67-minute grand finale. So, my rebakes formula. Does DuckTales check all 3 steps? Let's see. So number 1, bring in new audiences. Well, I am new to the franchise, so it's safe to say that yes, it did bring in a new audience. Bring in old audiences? Well, if we look at some reviews,
I went into yesterday waiting for the DuckTales reboot skeptical. Many times when something relaunched, it's not nearly as good as expected. However, I must say, the new DuckTales is quite good. Perhaps, I dare say, even better than the original.
So yeah, it's safe to say that it did bring in the old audience, yep. And number 3, did it bring in sweet cash? Yeah, okay, probably. This info isn't super available for consumers, however, it is assumed that Disney got what they wanted from the show and canceled it when it started to interfere with their plans, aka focusing more on Disney+. This reboot worked for many reasons. However, the biggest selling point is the nostalgia that surrounds the franchise. Ah, yes, nostalgia. The word that brings in great smiles on the faces of every business executive and every big media conglomerate. People who grew up with these old cartoons will remember how much fun they had when watching the show, and now they can feel like a kid again. Right? Well, not quite. See, reboots aren't known for their quality. DuckTales is one of the few exceptions. Most of these reboots receive very poor reception. An example of these poor reboots is the Powerpuff Girls reboot in 2016, which has a 3.6 out of 10 on IMDb. That's like pretty bad. Allow me to read a review. If you're going to reboot a beloved show, there are a couple things to consider. You should try to uphold the creative and artistic vision, maybe preserve the integrity by keeping some of the talent, and don't alienate the fans. Basically, it should be entertaining. The new Powerpuff Girls fails at all of this. They didn't try to keep any of the spirit of the original show. They didn't even keep or ask any of the original voice actors, and it just has the worst writing around. Powerpuff Girls is known to be a no-good reboot. But there are others out there, such as Thundercats Roar, which currently has a 2.1 out of 10 on IMDb. All the critiques of these reboots are the same. Poorly fleshed out characters, extreme change in tone from the previous show, unfunny jokes and childish humor, and overall, really poor writing. In fact, all of these reviews point out how these reboots feel soulless and money grabby. People are very aware of what these companies do. Teen Titans Go, Powerpuff Girls, and Thundercats Roar are all considered bad reboots, but they are really just unoffensive, low-risk shows made to bring in that sweet money. And at the end of the day, they're quite forgettable. So, how do they fit in my rebake formula? So, number 1, do they bring in new fans? Teen Titans Go? Apparently yes. Thundercats Roar and Powerpuff Girls hit their target audience, so sure, I guess you can say they did bring in new fans. Whether they kept them or not is to be seen. These shows are a little bit too young. Number 2, bring in the old fans. Teen Titans Go, Thundercats Roar, Powerpuff Girls, not really, since they all deviated so far from their original source material. And the most important one, did it bring in that sweet cash? Teen Titans Go is super successful and hasn't ended yet. In fact, it's still airing and has been for 8 years now. So yeah, it has brought in that cash, probably more than we'll ever see in our lifetime. Powerpuff Girls, well, it ran for 3 years, with 3 seasons, so I guess you can say it was, and it kind of just did what Cartoon Network wanted, I guess, but certainly not as successful as Teen Titans Go. Thundercats Roar, no, it was cancelled after a year and 1 season, so it was not successful. It didn't bring in the money they wanted. Nobody seemed to really like that show. So these shows are kind of bad, but really nothing terrible. The real culprits here are the huge budget blockbusters. That's right, your favorite cartoon characters are bringing their shenanigans to modern-day New York City. You got Alvin and the Chipmunks, Smurfs, Tom and Jerry, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, freaking Garfield? These are the types of reboots that I personally find the most offensive. Conceptually, it is the laziest, most unimaginative, uninspired way to reboot a cartoon classic. Your favorite cartoon characters from the 80s and 90s are now overly realistic CGI characters interacting with the real world, real people and places. See, this sounds like an interesting concept on paper, sure, but every single company jumped on the bandwagon, oversaturated theaters with the same concept over and over and over and over and over again, milking it for every last cent. One uninspired movie after another, same basic plot with uncanny character designs. This is way too much. Millions of dollars spent and countless talented artists hired to make these movies that most people will forget about in about a week. I want to say, before I continue, that I actually don't have a problem with these movies. Now, I don't find them appealing, but honestly, if I really look at it, these movies provided jobs for tons of people and probably helped a lot of animators get their foot in the door. These movies also provided lots of young kids with hours of entertainment. I don't want to write off these movies/reboots completely because there are good things that have come from them. I don't like the fact that these movies are lazy and uninspired, but hey, you know what? It's nothing new to the entertainment industry. What really makes me upset is the low-risk, high-reward business philosophy used by these companies when making these films. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Remember when I said this was also about video game remakes? Yeah, I know, I kind of forgot too, but hey, let's get back on that train. So how much different are video game remakes from cartoon reboots? So like I said before, a remake is when an old video game gets completely new graphics, reworked controls, and is released on new modern hardware. Now I just need to say this real quick, okay? The Mario 3D Collection is not considered a remake, since Nintendo clearly did very little on the remaking side of things, so I classify that as a remaster, which is a whole nother word that we don't need right now, so just listen, I ain't talking about those yet, maybe another video, just not today, leave me alone, oh my gosh, jeez, goodness. So, how are these two types of remakes, how are they different? I mean, they're essentially the same thing, right? Reviving an old classic with a fresh coat of paint. Well, for video game remakes, I mean, you don't really have to write a new story since it's a remake of a pre-existing game. You also don't really have to come up with the new game mechanics either, since that work is already done for you. See, I mean, everything has to be remade, like graphics and assets and stuff, but a lot of the concept work is out of the way. This seems like a pretty good low-risk, high-reward situation, right? A remake is a lot of work, but since a lot of the basic gameplay mechanics are figured out, it means spending more time on making the game work with the modern hardware and giving the graphics a nice boost and adding more content, which just is like icing on the cake, you know what I mean? A good example of a remake is The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. This game was originally released in 1993 and looked like this and ran on this. It received pretty good reviews and all that, but in 2019, Nintendo released a full remake of the game. Now, it looks like this and runs on this. My sweet. The reason why Link's Awakening is a good example of a remake is because, well, I mean, like, looking at it kind of speaks for itself, you know what I mean? But besides the graphics, it has been 26 years since the game's original release, meaning a whole new generation was born and raised since it came out. It also means that people who played this game as a kid have some nostalgia for it now. So, in terms of remake's formula, 1, it captures a new audience. I mean, I played it, so yes, it does. I can speak for that. Captures an old audience. Yes, it does. Brings in that sweet money. It sold 3.3 million copies. Congratulations, Nintendo, you did. Okay, let's look to another remake. Spyro Reignited Trilogy. This is a remake of 3 Spyro the Dragon games. The original in 1998, the sequel Ripto's Rage in 1999, and finally the Year of the Dragon in 2000. The remake came out in 2018 to modern consoles. Due to these games being on new consoles and with that really nice graphical upgrade, it kind of made sense and felt right. It was also well received by fans and newcomers alike. So, bring in newbies? Check. Bring in oldies? Check. Make that cash. It sold over 1 million copies in 2 days. That's pretty successful. Okay, we have one more remake.
Final Fantasy VII.
The original game released in 1997 on the PS1, and the remake came out in 2020, 23 years later. Now, this is a remake. It completely changes the game from this to this. It's not just a graphical enhancement with modern controls. No, this is a whole different game. It keeps the plot from the first game with additional things added, even though it only really covers 30% of the game's original story. Instead of it sticking to the original turn-based battle system, fights happen in real time, making them a little bit more engaging for modern audiences. Everything was rebuilt from the ground up and took on a totally different perspective than the original game. Unlike Link's Awakening and Spyro Reignited, which kept the original game's layouts with a few tweaks, Final Fantasy VII kinda changed like everything. It gave old fans a new perspective on the game world and allowed new fans to experience this classic RPG in a modern way. So, new fans, yes. Old fans, yes. Money? It sold 3.5 million copies in 3 days! Each of these 3 remakes are fairly successful in their own right, even though, if you look at reviews, players have some common critiques. These games look and feel new at times, but they still hold that same older game design. Even if Final Fantasy VII looks and pretty much plays completely differently, gamers will still tell you that it feels very linear. Link's Awakening is a big improvement from the original, but it still feels like a Game Boy game. And Spyro still has some weird beginning 3D platformer era control issues. None of these critiques mean the games are completely unplayable and should be ignored for the rest of time. No. These games are obviously fun to play and very successful, but it shows that even though the games have these new looks and such, it hasn't really changed all that much fundamentally. You still got that, old musky book scent in there somewhere that you kind of have to deal with. Okay, so what's the point in bringing up video game remakes? Even though they are pretty much a one-for-one copy of pre-existing games, it modernizes it, and it makes the game available on current hardware, which, because these companies don't like making these old games available for their current systems, even though they can do that. You can do this, you can bring it back. it also makes them a little bit more appealing with new graphics and polished systems. Like for me, when I look at old Spyro, I'm like, meh. Then I look at new Spyro, I'm like, alright, okay. Also, these games tend to be around 10 to 20 years old before being remade. So that's a huge selling point right there. Also, it's the fact that it's a game. You can interact with it, which makes it more appealing. You pretty much know what you're gonna get. And even if it's been a while since you played, or if you even played these games at all, it's a solid buy. For new fans, it's a new experience. For old fans, it's that old classic that they get to play again without having to hook up their old systems. For someone like me, whose first home console was the Wii, I haven't ever played these old games, even though there was like Virtual Console and stuff. I was too young to understand it, or even really want to play those games at the time. So for me, it's pretty much a win, because I get to play these games everybody talks about, and it's a new experience. Now, how far is too far for these remakes? So there hasn't been a remake that's been like kind of offensive or like seen as a waste of resources from what I can tell. Remakes are pretty much well reserved, and gamers are always clamoring for retro games to be brought to their present consoles. But as I was writing this video, a new remake had been announced. That's right! The Last of Us Remake! Yay! It had been announced that The Last of Us, a classic, critically acclaimed video game from 2013, is being remade. And not much is known of that because it's just an announcement. But it's enough to get people talking, that's for sure. Now, I think I made myself clear that I am all for remaking old games, because it's pretty much like getting a new game, even though it's old, and if there's enough time that has passed, it's like, yeah, it deserves something like this. But I do think that will be much harder for remakes to be acceptable if the game is only 8 years old, has a remaster, which is 7 years old, is available to play on modern consoles, and plays perfectly fine. We don't know how this remake will look, and at the time it's released, the original game will be around 10 to 11 years old, give or take. Maybe even 12. So who knows how much the game industry will change in that time. But it isn't like The Last of Us has aged poorly. It still plays great since the gameplay is just so tight, even though there's a few annoyances here and there. If video game remakes start to become like The Last of Us, where the game gets a AAA remake but doesn't need one, it's going to be a lot harder for people to accept them. We already see this when they announced the remake. People are just mad. They're like, well, the game doesn't need a remake, so why would you do it? Put that money into something new. However, companies find it better for their pockets if the resources went to something less risky. See, in every business endeavor, there is always risk and reward. If Disney wants to make a movie, there is always a risk involved. The risk is the resources put into the movie or show, and the time spent on developing the movie or show. The risk always affects the reward. Always. If Disney puts a lot of resources and time into a film, they expect the reward to be high, aka they expect to earn a lot of money off that movie or show. This can be seen through ticket sales, TV ratings, monthly active users. Companies love high reward. Companies hate low reward. Makes sense. Easy peasy. The risk can be high or low depending on many different factors. The amount of money or time spent on the project, the amount of people working on the project, whether or not the project is based off a pre-existing intellectual property or not, if the show is live action or animated, and even the art direction of an animated project is cause for a risk. There is a lot of risk involved with all projects. Companies want to lower the risk and receive a high reward. The lower the risk means less time and money spent on the project, and the less amount of people working on the project. So, if a project receives low reward, the loss is minimal. If the project receives high reward, then it's a huge win for the company and those business executives' pockets. And it just so happens that using nostalgic IPs is a great way to lower risk and raise reward. If we compare Powerpuff Girls to Ducktales, you'll see that one understands its characters, its audience, and what made the original so loved. And the other just takes the characters, plops them in a totally different setting with a vague understanding of what made them so loved originally. It seems like DuckTales had a higher risk than most reboots due to its animation quality, its character writing, its plot writing, and overall aesthetic. Compare this to Powerpuff Girls, and it kinda just speaks for itself. In reality, most reboots are low risk, high reward. And higher risk reboots are some of the same quality as DuckTales. It's a shame, but this is the direction the entertainment industry is headed. There is an oversaturation of streaming services, and they need a lot of content to justify new monthly users. Easy way to gather people together is to just reboot everything you can. This leads to an oversaturation of reboots, and probably a handful of them will receive good reviews. The death of imagination. Reboots and remakes are fine in their own right, but the industry is becoming oversaturated with them. With the rise of streaming services, reboots are taking over, and original ideas are being turned down. This is scary. Okay, like, if all we see are these low-risk cash grab shows and games from major entertainment companies, it's a sign that creativity isn't wanted anymore. These companies just want reboots, they want to play it safe, they just want the money. And listen, I know I sound like an old geezer, but man, I'm not happy about this. And now it looks like even video games are going to be haunted by this. As someone who wants to create things, the last thing I'd want is to be stuck working on a reboot for something like Adventure Time or Gravity Falls or even Avatar: Last Airbender. The biggest reason why is because I want to bring my ideas to life, to inspire others to create their own characters and build their own worlds. I want to share a story that has a beginning and an end. Now allow me to kind of sidetrack just a little bit. Endings are just as important as beginnings. A story that ends properly is more likely to carry a legacy than a show that ends prematurely. It is important that we see proper endings to the shows we watch. It allows the creator to tie up loose ends and bring things to their natural conclusion. It also brings closure to our audience, allowing them to say their goodbyes and to see their favorite characters off one last time. Reboots can make these goodbyes a little bit less heartfelt. So, just so you understand the gravity of the situation and how oversaturated the market is going to become, here are just some of the reboots that are supposed to be coming out within the next few years. The Mighty Ducks, Lion King prequel, but it's the live-action version, Darkwing Duck, Monsters Inc., Percy Jackson, Lizzie McGuire, Proud Family, Night at the Museum, Home Alone, She Divided a Dozen, Aladdin spin-off, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Conan the Barbarian, Rugrats, iCarly, Robin Hood, like the Fox one, but hey, guess what? It's live action now. Beauty and the Beast, live action prequel. 101 Dalmatians prequel, live action. Jetsons, live action. Avatar: Last Airbender. Cowboy Bebop, live action. Fairly Odd Parents, live action. Ren and Stimpy. This is a list of only 23 of the reboots planned, and 8 of these are going to be live action reboots of animated properties. These are also a selected list of a few that I am familiar with. I counted, and there are at least 85 reboots planned to release in the near future. This is only counting from lists from a few articles. These are productions that have official announcements, more or less. This isn't counting things like The Office reboot, which there are no current plans. This may not seem like a big number at first, until you compare this to about the 10 or 20 reboots that came out in the last decade. It's insane. What does this mean for original shows? Realistically, companies need original shows to premiere on their streaming service to provide more content and competition. However, it may mean that the resources put into these original shows is a lot lower to avoid that high risk. It may mean shows that are well received but pose high risk for the company are dropped prematurely. A great example of this is Infinity Train, which if you haven't watched yet is a very good show, and it just got cancelled on its 4th season. People from the animation industry have spoken out about how they do not want to run reboots and would much rather make original shows, and I can't blame them. The reality is though that many people can't turn down these job offers. They need to work to provide for themselves and their families. Working on reboots provides them jobs and income. And working on reboots can really help people in the industry grow in their skills, helping them become better writers, animators, actors, composers, voice actors even. Although rebooting tons of shows definitely hurts the industry in terms of original content, it certainly helps provide jobs for people, and certainly allows people to grow. What we may see in the future of entertainment is a lack of new imaginative content. It will still be there, but it won't be much. This bothers me a lot. I am a big fan of being creative and encouraging others to be creative. Each and every one of us is made to create. For some, it's creating delicious food. For others, it's new innovative technologies. For some, it's making music, and for people like me, it's writing stories and drawing. I really hope that people looking at the future of the industry don't get discouraged. I don't want people to see the oversaturation of reboots as doom and gloom. There is still hope despite what most companies are focusing on. Imagination isn't dead. Support original shows when you can. Express your love for the indie games you play. Continue to show others that creativity is preferred over sloppy reboots. Most importantly, show support to the creators and crew members that work on the shows you love. Whether it's a reboot or not, support the artists, support the writers, support the actors. Show these companies that the people behind the reboot are worth following. Show the people behind the remake that you are interested in their passion project. When a creator's name becomes a selling point, companies are more willing to give them some freedom. Look at Craig McCracken. His latest show, Kid Cosmic, was announced way back ago, and his name was the main selling point. Considering how every show he makes is amazing, people want to check out his new show and see what he's working on. Hopefully, by continuing to praise the people behind the shows, along with praising creativity, we can make an impact which can help these companies understand that we want original content. I don't want to see these low-risk shows. I'd rather see Owen Dennis's new original projects. I'd rather see Kid Cosmic conclude the proper way, the way Craig McCracken envisions it. I'd rather see Mitchell's vs. the Machines, this cool animated film, rather than another live-action Lion King. Why would they make this? I know that people who share the same opinions as me won't influence Disney to stop making crappy live-action reboots or anything, but we can certainly spread the word and support others who care about preserving creativity and imagination. I want to recommend a few people who work in the industry: Forsha, Nick Paris, Ashes, Steve Wolfhard, Marie Luminary, or Puka Noodles, Matt Barley, Fat Bard, all the bros at Butterscotch Shenanigans, Adam Muto, Toby Fox, Craig McCracken, Alex Hirsch, Keon Johan, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, and Luke Pearson. So there's a small chance that one of you is listening to this video, but if you are, I want to say thank you. Each one of you has inspired me to create and grow in my skills as a storyteller and an artist. I know how it feels when someone recognizes your work, and I want you to know that I have seen your work. I have used your boards as reference. I have played your games. I heard your music, and I've even listened to your podcasts. You have made an impact, and I can't wait to see where you guys go next. Now, with a closing note, once again, do not ever harass creators or crew members no matter what. Like I said before, the people working hard, they deserve all the respect in the world, even if they work on things that you don't like Don't harass them for heaven's sake. Also, of course, I don't hate reboots. Remember, I gave praise to Ducktales. I think if television shows handled reboots like video game industry handles their remakes, we're in for a good time. I just don't want originality, imagination, creativity to be an afterthought. Imagination isn't dead and never will be, of course. Let's keep supporting our favorite creators and encouraging great work when we see it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope that whatever project you're working on, you see it to the end. Make it, do it! Make your webcomic, make that song, make that album, make that video game you're thinking about. I want to see more people be creative, and I'm hoping that, by making these videos, I can encourage at least someone out there. Hey everybody, thank you for watching again. This is my little rant portion of the video, so if you like my video, just like, subscribe, hit the bell. I hope you liked and enjoyed what I put out there. I do want to say that this was really fun to make. I really enjoyed going through and researching these shows, and I've been thinking about reboots and how frustrating they are, so to make this video was very nice, and it's like, get a lot of things off my chest. So I appreciate you for listening to this, 40-minute video? My gosh. Anyways, once again, thank you. Be creative, continue to make cool things, and hey, if you like what I have to say, stick around. There's gonna be other videos in the future. So thank you, and have yourself a wonderful day. Goodbye.